Yo, what is up, guys? It's Pedro here. So, the Washington Commanders just got some really good updates overall from all sides on the injury front. So, we're going to talk about that. If you guys are new, make sure to subscribe, hit that like button, and that notification bell as well. Also, we'll be giving you guys a Terry McLaurin update, Brian Robinson update as well. So, stay tuned for that. And we're like 30 subscribers away from 15,800. So let's get there by the end of today. I know we can do it. Just takes 1 second. I know some of y'all aren't subscribed, but let's start with the injury stuff and then we'll get into the B-Rob and Terry McLaurin stuff. I know you guys are sick of that, so I'm going to start with the injury stuff, but if you want to get into the other stuff, you can skip. But Brandon Coleman, he returned to practice yesterday and was the starting left guard during the first 11v11 drills. That is amazing news. Barring any setback, he will be more than ready to go by week one. Probably would be ready, if they really had to play or something, this Saturday. If it was a regular season game, he probably would have already been, practicing a little bit earlier. But looks like he's good to go. That's your starting left guard. That's a guy you really want to be healthy. So, and guy you really want playing there. So he was on the offensive line last year, just at a different position. Now you got him at left guard, and he's been out since August 2nd, so that's 3 weeks basically, and it's good to have him coming back. So shout out to Brandon Coleman. I'm excited to see what he can do this year for the Commanders, and I think he has a lot of potential. And that's a pick that Commanders fans don't really talk about. When they talk about last year's draft class, obviously they talk about Jaden, they talk about Mikey Sanders still, and they'll talk about some of the guys that have disappointed. Like they'll talk about Ben Sinnott, they'll talk about Luke McCaffrey, but no one really mentions Brandon Coleman, who has been pretty, had a decent season last year at left tackle, and now at guard, I think he's going to be even better. Another guy is Noah Brown. Noah Brown has been out for a minute, and let's pause this, just bothering me on the bottom of the screen. I don't even know if you guys could see it, but Dan Quinn said Noah Brown is getting close to the arrows pointing up from. I have no idea, absolutely no idea what happened with Noah Brown. I know that he was hurt earlier in the offseason in June-ish. And, during the rest of the offseason, that, the 6 weeks in between training camp, we just heard good things. He's getting back, stuff like that. And then he started training camp, maybe on the side for a little bit, but then he started practicing. And then out of the blue, he's just missing practice. And I was like, all right. I mean, they didn't really give us an update. It said he's out. So good to see that they said the arrow is pointing up for him. I know he was at practice today. Not practicing, but he was there. Same thing with Terry McLaurin, which we will get to in a bit. But Noah Brown, arrow pointing up for him. He didn't say, Dan Quinn didn't say anything about a timetable, but said the arrow is pointing up. Does that mean he's going to, be ready for this preseason game? No. Does that mean week one? We have no idea. I wouldn't be surprised either way. If he's ready for week one, would not be surprised. If he's also out for week one, I would not be surprised. So just be prepared for both. But hearing this is better than hearing nothing, because we have heard nothing for the last 3 weeks. So, arrow pointing up, good news for Noah Brown and this receiving core. We haven't had a lot of guys step up. Jalen Lane has stepped up the last few weeks and had a really good preseason game last week, which, I guess this week because it was on Monday. But he had a really good game, 42 yards, I believe, and, had half of the receiving yards for the team and showed a lot and, showed a little bit as a returner too. But besides that, Luke McCaffrey, he's been open sometimes, but, hasn't shown a lot. Quarterbacks also haven't gotten him the ball. And then, have some of the other receivers, the vets, Chris Moore, KJ Osborne, Michael Gallup, they really haven't showed anything. And then, Ben Sinnott, not a receiver, obviously, hasn't shown a lot. We'll see, though, this year. Zach Ertz, obviously, I think is going to have a good season. If you're playing fantasy, I feel like he's a good sleeper pick you can get later on, especially if your league doesn't have a lot of Commanders fans. And he'll be a really high floor tight end for you. And, you got John Bates also, who's just such a good blocker. So they have a, decent tight end duo there. And, if they can get something from Ben Sinnott, that would be really, really good for them this year. Other stuff, so Trey Amos missed the game against the Bengals, kind of a game time type of thing or game day type of injury that was reported. A little bit of tightness in his hamstring. said if it was a normal game, probably would have played, but, they held him out with an abundance of caution, which is good. You don't need to get the guy, missing, tweaking his hamstring, trying to, go crazy against Jamar Chase, and then he's out for 2-3 weeks of the season. So, you don't want that. And, I'm happy that they did that. It would have been cool seeing Trey Amos against Jamar Chase or T. Higgins, but it's more important that we get to see him week 1 against whoever he's going up against. If it's Malik Neighbors, Wan'Dale Robinson, Darius Slayton, we want to see Trey Amos out there. And then Sam Cosmi, he's hit all the markers so far. Still unclear his practice start. Says he's encouraged about possibility of him being on active roster coming out of camp. That is amazing news. Saying, he's encouraged about the possibility of him being on the active roster coming out of camp, which, means him possibly playing week 1 or the first few weeks of the season. So that's really good news. And, they can't put him on IR. If they put him on IR, he's out for the season if they do that before they do the 53-man roster cut down. So I think they can keep him on PUP because he's still on PUP. I don't know the exact rules. It used to be PUP with 6 games. I'm sure that's probably the same. So what they could do is just keep him on the active roster, and he still might miss the first couple games this season. And then last injury update is Marcus Mariota has been dealing with Achilles tendonitis. So that's the first time we really heard about his injury. And the team has been giving him time, expects to be good for week 1. And usually the players are going to say that, but I believe Mariota. The injury's been going on for a while. I mean, I went to camp on the 29th, so over 3 weeks ago, and that was like his second day in a row miss. So he's been out probably since like the 27th, which is around when they started. He might have had a few days of practice in, maybe a weekish of practice, but after that, he was basically out. So, I guess it's an injury you don't want to mess with. Anything Achilles, calf related, what happens. We all know what happens. It's obviously a different sport, but to Kevin Durant and then Tyrese Halliburton in the playoffs this year in the finals, Game 7, and then also, football related. Christian McCaffrey had a similar injury or the exact same injury last year, and was out for a while, came back, and it didn't work out there. So you want to make sure he's fully healed. Obviously, quarterback's a different position than running back, and you don't need as much explosiveness. But Mariota is a runner, so it is what it is. But also, you hope that Mariota doesn't have to play at all, so he can get even like the whole season off, of rest, and doesn't have to come in. But they do have some packages for him, even when Jaden's fully healthy and he's playing. They have some packages for him to do QB sneaks or other stuff as well. So, you would like him to be fully good to go for week 1 and, just as the backup. Because the other guys, Sam Hartman and Josh Johnson, like both of them, they're good guys and everything. But, they're not, you don't want them touching the field. I mean, you don't want any quarterback 3 playing, but Sam Hartman, if he's playing, we're cooked. And Josh Johnson, maybe a little bit different, but still hasn't been that good in the preseason. I like Hartman, though. I would like to keep him around on the practice squad. That's it, though. Purely based off vibes. Purely based off the vibes that him and Jaden Daniels have. I'm sure Jaden's going to be campaigning for it. But yeah, that's it there. Terry McLaurin stuff, I don't even... This has just gotten to a point where it's like, what am I even, going to report on? What am I even going to post a video on Terry McLaurin? Because it's the same-ish every single day. Oh, he wants this. The team wants to give him that. He's at practice. He's, in his hoodie, whatever. It really, there's no update really on Terry. The update is that there is no update. It's the same news. There's trade rumors going around with the Steelers. I don't buy that at all. And, they just traded for DK. They paid him a lot of money. And then you also had the, they're not trading for Terry. And it's really frustrating that it's gotten to this point. It is really frustrating, but it is what it is. At this point, I just hope he plays week 1. You figure out the rest during the offseason next year. I still would love if they got a deal done. They still got 2 weeks plus until the regular season starts, so they have time. but the clock is ticking. The clock is ticking for sure, and they don't got a lot of time. They do not have a lot of time, and like I said though, it gets to a certain point where it's like, I love Terry, but yeah, the season goes on with or without him. Obviously, it would be much better if he's playing, but it's been too long, man. And I've always been more on the Terry side, but at this point, it's like, dude, we know you want your money and everything, but just get on the football field, bro. Practice with your teammates, and you don't want to be in a condition week one where you're not your full self, and that's gonna hurt yourself too. And I don't know if he realizes that, but if he's not 100% week one, well, guess what? If you don't have a contract by then, you're hurting yourself and your production for next offseason when you're looking for a contract again. And guess what? Next year when he's going up for a contract, he's going to be 30 going into 31, and it's going to be even harder for him to get a deal. So, it is what it is. It's frustrating. B-Rob, there was a lot of I think 4 trades last night within like an hour. Some receiver trades, the tackle, a lot of small level trades. The Broncos traded one of their starters, Vele or whatever his name is, for a 4th round pick, which was crazy. And, some other trades were made as well, but for the most part, nothing crazy. And B-Rob, expecting that to be done soon. I think even, Dan Quinn said he hopes it gets done soon. And yeah, we're just kind of waiting for that. I would say, by the end of this weekend, it should happen. I mean, 100% he is not on this roster week one. There's no doubt about it. Whether it's a trade or cut, I mentioned it when they put out the information. You kind of lose leverage when you're shopping a player so openly. And, the thing is, Brian Robinson is a level of player and has that cachet where, okay, so there's going to be some competition maybe and, more interest than a normal player that you're going to be shopping, where you might still get a 6th round pick or something, which would be good. Get the assets you can, and hopefully, Bill Krosky-Merritt plays as well or better than Brian Robinson did last year. And in that case, well, guess what? You just got a 6th round pick, and you kept the same level of production, and you save money too. I also saw, people campaigning like, oh, them trading Brian Robinson saves them money for Terry. No, it does not. I mean, sure, it saves them money, but Terry is under contract for this year, guys. It's not. The factor isn't, oh, how much money do the Commanders have this year? No, he's under contract for this year. The factor is, all right, next year, the year after that. So if it's like, and Brian Robinson is not under contract for next year. If it was a guy per se like Sam Cosmi, for example, obviously don't think that's going to happen. But let's say they traded Sam Cosmi. In that case, I don't know the exact contract details, but I'm sure they would save some money down the line, right? And then you could be like, all right, maybe they're making room for a Terry McLaurin deal. But the Brian Robinson stuff doesn't affect Terry at all. And I saw some teams interested, the Cowboys, the Browns, the Dolphins, maybe the Texans as well. I know they have Nick Chubb, but Joe Mixon's out. Maybe they want, him, B-Rob for a few weeks as the starter. So all those teams reportedly are interested or, possibly interested in the running back market / Brian Robinson. So wanted to give you guys that update there, but mostly this video is about the injuries and some good news overall. And, the B-Rob stuff, whatever, the Terry McLaurin stuff, it's been way too long. It's felt like 2-3 months that we've been going at this, but really it's been kind of 1 month of a lot of it, because training camp started about a month ago. There were rumblings and like content before that, but really it started a month ago, and it's crazy that it's only been a month. It feels like it's been 2 or 3 months. But thanks for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed. If you made it till the end of this video, please hit that subscribe button. Comment down an OG player that you really like, whether it's a guy, if you're younger, a guy that you watched 6 years ago. If you're older, maybe a guy you watched 20, 30 years ago. Go ahead and comment them down below, and peace.